Hi everyone, so the Airfix Stuka, one of my all-time favourite Airfix kits. That and the Hurricane, I think those two out of the 24 scale range are the best, personally. For the time, they were superb kits. And even now, if you can get the first issues, hold their own. I remember buying the Stuka when it first came out at the tender age of 10 or 11 for a whopping £7.49. So I have fond memories of this kit. Now I could have bought the Trumpeter Stuka, they've got the B version out. It's just outlaying all that money and finding once the thing's built, is it going to look like a Stuka? Is it going to catch the character? I know the Airfix one does. Now it's going to be a two-part build, maybe. As I'm uploading this video, I'm still building the Stuka, so it could go to 3 parts. So let's take a look, a quick look, not a detailed look, of what we get inside the big shiny box. Isn't Ray Cross's artwork amazing? Now, not a mint kit by any stretch of the imagination, i.e. it's not all in its bag sealed. There are parts that are loose, come from the gates and all that sort of thing, but everything's there. Here's the other frame from the same bag. We've got a mixture, what I call flush detail and raised detail. I don't know whether you can, that catches that. It's quite in your face, isn't it? I'll talk about it in detail when I get to the wings. But other than that, it's quite subtle, the flush detail. The engine bearer is moulded in. Some of the internal detail, which for its age is quite nice and crisp. How accurate it is, I don't know. This bag is sealed. Bombs, pilot and gunner arms. What else we got? We've got the exhaust stacks, which are not holed. We've got the clear parts here, which as soon as I've done with this, I shall take those out. Bits of the engine. Yeah, here's the part, the actual front console. I have ordered some dials for that. As detailed and nice as that is, it needs those dials, especially in this scale. How much work will be involved in that, I don't know, but it is specifically meant for the Airfix kit, the set I've ordered. Magazine cases, seat. We've got the framework for the centre canopy. A few loose ends, there's a spinner in there, all sorts in here. I won't take them out because there's bits loose already that have come off some of the frames over the years. This was probably, all these bits are probably bagged a good 25 years ago. Stand. The rubber tyres. Whenever I bought these kits over the years, I always put them in a bag with a bit of talcum powder. It seems to help preserve them. Don't ask me why, but it does work. I shall give these a good clean, see whether they can be used. But even if they can, I may end up using them to make some resin replacements. Lower wing, upper wing. And that detail, so you can see a mixture of raised and what I call flush, even though there's it's countersunk. It's very subtle, but it's there. And I was a bit disheartened at first because I thought, oh, I didn't want to re-rivet this. I'd assumed it was all flush detail. This is the upper wing, so you can see it ends at a certain spar. The lower wing, it's a bit more in your face. But looking at Stukas in museums, that is actually right. There is a mixture of flush detail and raised detail. So my solution to keep it, but just knock it back, hopefully with a bit of sanding, but just not make it as prominent than it is there. I mean, it's beautifully and sharp, and hopefully it should do the job. We shall see. The decals, they look pretty good, but whether they would do what they're supposed to do, I don't know, over these many decades. Which brings me to the next point, is that I'm probably going to have to make my own stencils, or the easier option, try and find if there's any aftermarket products, whether that be stencils or actual decals themselves. You get the two options in the kit, France and the Libya one. Usual format for the time for the Airfix 124 scale kits. So you can see there's quite a fair amount of detail in there. We've got the engine. Once again, more than enough detail there to keep the eye interested. I will be motorising this kit like I did the 109. So you can see it's quite nice and busy. And more bits to add to the sidewall. So yeah, stating the obvious, but most of the parts are for the engine and the cockpit area. Once they're done, it should be plain sailing. So first thing I've got to do is just double check all the parts there again, and then wash those tyres and decide what to do with those. So I cleaned the wheels up, if it would focus, and they're okay, but I think if I cast them in resin, I'll be able to clean them up a lot easier than this. So at foam board, I've made some boxes for the silicone to be poured in. I've attached the plastic hubs. It'll be easier to cast this all as one lump. I've done the same for the tail wheel. I've tried to make the area as small as possible for the simple reason I've got very little silicone left. So I've mixed the silicone. See it's full of air bubbles. What I like to do first is just lightly coat the whole area. I just give it light colour like that and let it saturate the whole object. By letting this run slowly, it will get thinner and thinner and hopefully create less air bubbles. Once I'm happy I've covered the major detail, I shall pull the rest of the silicone in. So hopefully you can see there's a thin layer over that now. Can't see any air bubbles. So now I can fill the rest of it up. So the silicone's had about 12-14 hours to cure. Now before I take these out, this is a no-no. I don't know why I went this route. It's just going to create more problems for me. I'm going to try and pull this pin out the way it should have gone. So that's the base of your box. I'd attach another piece and then attach the tyre with the hubs installed, of course, on top like that. Bit of super glue, a bit of PVA glue just to hold it in place, and then build the box up around it. It just makes it so easier to take this part out of the silicone. When it came out, I'm just hoping I've done no damage internally. We shall see. I'm just going to clean up the edges. So I really haven't got a clue what this looks like until I make my first resin part. And the first thing I'll do is just add a bit of talcum powder inside there. Also, I'll just make a little hole for pouring. Now if I had done it the right way, this way with that block I just showed you, we'd have had that shape and the top there for a pouring plug. So I'll add some talcum powder to this and we'll get pouring and see what we've got. So I've poured the 2-part resin in. Let's see what we get. It's alright, that'll clean up okay. So I'm probably going to make a couple more and pick the best to clean up. Just need to drill that hole out. So that's one side of things out the way with now. So I better start on the engine. I've cut all the relevant parts to do with that area. I've added the motor, which I nabbed from one of these sets I've lying around. 42.5 PA. I've tested it, it works. Hands over your ears. It's annoying. You can see here where one of the side parts, it had the front detail ripped off. Bit of a botched job, but it's okay, it'll do. So now that the motor's in and it works, I can start adding all the other bits to this engine block. So with those 3 parts dry, and I've just cleaned up some of the seams, I can continue on adding. So I've gone as far as I want to with adding most of the components to the engine block. There's all these bits, but I think they're better painted off the actual assembly and then added later. So to all the engine parts, I've just added a basic colour to all the components. I've deviated from some of the suggestions that Airfix give you for the paint on these items. Same with these hoses here, Airfix say they should be silver. So all the parts have had some dry brushing of some sort and wash added. I've used oils and water-based washes and just messed around. Literally that's what I've done, messed around. Occasionally I've gone over the washes with some more dry brushing till I'm satisfied that it looks interesting enough as a part on its own. And then the next thing to do is to assemble all these parts and see what it looks like. There will be touch-ups here and there with the end of the pipes and things like that. And then I will add a final grime wash once they've all been assembled. So that's the engine assembly finished. I only found out later that this could have been coloured in blue, the same colour as the undersides of the Stuka. It's a shame that would have added a bit of colour to the actual engine assembly. But never mind, worse things happen at sea. The prop hub. So that's nearly done. So I was going to do the exhaust stacks next and drill the stacks out. But as you can see, Airfix give you two options. This one attaches to the side of the engine along with its plate. But it's saying, if I've read it right, that you can't fit this panel on if you do that. You have to have this panel off all the time. If you want the panel on, they give you this option, the stubby one, and that will attach like that, which is not really ideal. So I'm going to have to wait till I get to the stage where the engine's in place on the fuselage. I can dry fit this side panel and see exactly how much of an issue it will be to add these rather than these short stubby ones to the panel. So I'm just going to wait till I get to that stage before I can tackle them, which is a pity. I would like to get the whole engine area finishing done with. So the next stage, probably the cockpit area. So I've detached all the parts that are relevant to the cockpit area and I've cleaned them all up. Just give you some idea of the detail. Maybe things like these levers here, I don't know whether they'll be like ball top levers. I've started to assemble some of the cockpit parts. The rear seat. But before I could start adding parts to the fuselage, I had to clean those up. mainly the engine bearers. They were a nightmare. These bearers took quite a bit of cleanup. The slippage was quite bad, and especially that detail there. There's a sinkhole there I need to fill in at some point. All the parts were cleaned in some detergent, rinsed and dried, and then I could start adding parts to the side of the fuselage. So as you can see, I've started to prepare for the first coat of paint. Oh, the firewall. I couldn't use it as is, it was just too bare, especially as you can see quite a lot of this area. So I've added a few bits, started adding wire. I've drilled out holes where I will add other bits of wire, but I'll add them after it's been painted and weathered. So the first coat, which is black, thinned down by about 7%, applied to all the surfaces, cockpit surfaces. Then after that's dried, I used my mixture of RLM 02 over the black, making sure that the shadow areas of the black show through. It's a mixture of Tamiya's XF22, toned down by quite a lot of white. Next, I use that mixture and tone it down with some deck tan, and then I'm going to highlight certain areas of the cockpit. But first, I'm just going to do a test piece. Just try it on this firewall here, and then when it's dry, see whether it looks any good. If it does, I'll paint the rest. I must thin this paint down if I use it because it's quite gloopy. So let that dry. Now, if it's any good, I'll do the rest. So you can see on the cockpit floor here, I've just picked out certain areas. I've thinned the paint down just to give it a slightly patchier look in certain areas. So there's no rhyme or reason. I'm just picking out areas that I think the light colour will help accentuate. Once that's dried, I've picked out all the detail, panels, boxes, cabling. It's quite gory and colourful, perhaps too colourful really. But just have had a bit of interest to that rather bland interior. Everything's then sealed in with the Vallejo's gloss varnish, which is very good stuff, and then that's all left to dry. Once it's dried, I want to try adding oils now, especially to big areas like this where it's quite still quite bland. I've picked 3 colours. I don't know whether I'll use the yellow ochre. I'm just going to apply white oil in blobs here and there. And then with a bit of thinner, blobbed here there as well, just help it all blend in. Then with a dry brush, I'm just going to blend all this in. I want this as patchy as possible. I don't want any patterns. Next we use the green. It's a very strong colour here, so don't need a lot. Same again, just a few dabs of thinner here and there, and then with a clean brush, blend it all in. Once again, after that patchy effect. You leave that to dry, all that thinner on the surface is dry, and then I'm going to come back with a dry clean brush again and just blend in the rest. So I'll do the same with the rear piece, same method. And then once that oil has dried, I can start on the panel washes. I've just used black and burnt umber. and created a mix there, not too thin and not too thick. I'm going to apply it to the panel lines now. So I'm just going to let that go off a bit, just dry a bit, and I'll come in, clean brush, with a bit of thinners on it, not a lot, and we'll just tidy up those edges. So it's just a matter of messing around till you come to a point where you think, yeah, I'm happy with that. And applying this technique to the rest of the parts. So I've finished with all the cockpit parts, except for the front console, deal with that later on. So now we can start piecing some of it, not all of it, together. The seats, I haven't bothered wasting time with those because we're going to have our crew members sat in them, so they're going to hide a multitude of sins. So let's start piecing some of this cockpit together. So it looks busy enough in there with no extra work at all. By the time you get the figures in, you ain't going to see a lot anyway. So I want to thank you for watching. I'm going to finish the video off here now at this point, and I do hope to see you for the next stage of this vintage build.